seconds, 1 second. Kobe pump fake. Kobe for the win. Kobe Bryant.
2. He loops that to left field. Going to be a tough play. Jeter on the run, makes the play. And flies into the stands. Oh, what a play by Derek Jeter.
Roethlisberger has time. Throws to the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Holmes.
This is the Personal Foul Podcast. Got a special guest coming on the show this week, Dan Rose. Me and him been friends for 2 years now, but we've gone back and forth. We always love our sports talk. So especially with this coronavirus going on, got the NFL draft coming up. Pretty much so many sports things going on here lately, NFL news, and so we're gonna get things going here with my friend Dan. Dan, thanks for coming on, buddy.
What's going on, Colin? How you doing, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk some sports. It's kind of a dull time right now in the world, but it's always good to talk sports, especially with the NFL draft coming up.
Yes, it is, and it's crazy, this whole coronavirus. So to all the listeners, stay safe, stay inside unless you have to go out. Just use your proper precautions and just follow your guidelines that are given out to you, but to stay safe. But we'll try to ease things out here and stress, lower it here a little bit with some sports talk since there is no sports going on. But get into some here with, from both of us being from Jersey. Rutgers. I know you're a big Rutgers guy. Rutgers getting probably their biggest recruit in quite some time with Cliff Omoruyi, 4-star recruit, almost a 5-star recruit coming in here to Rutgers. What's that like, having a great season? Sadly, it was cut off here with the coronavirus. Rutgers is probably going to make the tournament for the first time in some, while here. What's your take on what Rutgers is building up there? Got quite a program.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what Steve Peichel has been able to do to this program is unreal. In just a short period of time as well, back in 2008, they landed their biggest recruit with Mike Rosario, another Jersey kid, and Cliff here, top 50 talent in the country, recruited by Kentucky, Auburn, Arizona State, as just a few schools. Is what's crazy also is he's only been playing basketball for 4 years now, and he's one of the top 50 players in the country. And it's amazing what they're able to add with already what they have. They return 7 of their 8 role players next year. They lose one of their centers, and then they also lose Yeboah. But to be able to add Cliff to what they already have is exciting. Hopefully they can continue to build on it next year.
Yeah, and you got to figure Rutgers held their own this year in a loaded Big Ten conference. If Rutgers could have just squeaked out some wins on the road, I think they would have been a very, very scary team. But they were a young team, and, man, they dominated at the rack this season. They finished up with 1 loss at the rack, and it was to Michigan, I believe, correct?
Yep, only 1 loss to your Wolverines.
Yeah, Michigan got the best of them, but Rutgers handled themselves at home, man, beating a lot of good teams. Maryland coming in there, didn't stand a chance. Ohio State, Michigan, a lot of teams just went down at the rack this season. If Rutgers can step it up next season going into on the road, especially in the Big Ten, which is a tough task. A lot of teams struggle on the road in the Big Ten because these teams are just so good at home. But Rutgers held their own. Rutgers getting a huge recruit coming in next year and building off a season that was great for the Big Ten and Rutgers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, hopefully with everything going on, we're able to play basketball next year. But I think this will all settle down, hopefully, and we can get back to sports.
For sure. But now going into our current sports that we have going on here, the NFL draft. It's going to be definitely a different look this season with it going virtual. It was supposed to be in Las Vegas to open up for the new team there in the Las Vegas Raiders, something to hype up the NFL fans there in Vegas to get something going there. But, yeah, that was cut off because of the coronavirus. So this is where we're at now with, this going on with the coronavirus. So we're going to have the NFL draft coming up here in Vegas, virtual draft. What's your expectations for the virtual draft?
Oh, man, it's crazy. I never thought in my time we would ever see something like this. The NFL draft, obviously seeing the guys walk up in the first round, holding the jerseys with the commissioner. It's exciting for the families, especially for these kids. I mean, they earn it, and it stinks that it almost gets taken away from them in an aspect like this. But it changes the whole dynamic of it with now teams aren't able to actually meet with the what am I trying to say here? They're trying to meet with the guys coming in the draft. And they can't do physicals, in-person physicals, which is definitely important for, I'm sure, a guy we'll talk about with Tua Tagovailoa. coming up here in a short time.
Yeah, it definitely changed everything. And just free agency also in general, the other sports things going on here with free agency, it changed a lot. A lot of these guys aren't getting physicals, so you're going off of physicals that ended the season last year with these players. It's definitely crazy when you got, free agency going through the motions without meeting with these guys, just Skype calling them. It was crazy watching on the NFL's Instagram page, Jalen Hurts talking with Jerry Jones and the rest of that group. There had to be like 10, 15 people in that FaceTime call with Jalen Hurts from Oklahoma, the quarterback coming out of the draft this year. And, yeah, it's just crazy to think these guys aren't having their workouts, which hurts, I think, some of these smaller kids, these smaller quarterbacks like Jordan Love. Not saying that it's going to hurt him because I think he's still going in the first round. We'll get into that in a little bit here as we go into the draft itself, where these players are going to fall. But I think it hurts some of these later round guys, these guys that could have hopped into, maybe fourth or third round picks, but now they might stay in the seventh round because you don't know. This is where it comes down to the scouting department, and some of these teams scouting is really going to pay off, this season. You're going to see a lot of these teams that scout really, really well probably hit home runs in this draft, where teams that don't scout as well and kind of go off these workouts, private workouts, when these guys come in and the pro days and stuff like that. It's definitely crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll definitely be interesting to follow in just a couple weeks here, and definitely see how the hype builds up to and see which guys gain stock and which guys lose stock as it gets closer to draft day.
So, yes, we're going to get right into our draft here with the number 1 overall pick going to Cincinnati. I think we all expect Joe Burrow to go number 1. What's your take on Cincinnati and what they're trying to do there? I think Joe Burrow does go number 1, though. I think that's, set in stone.
I agree with you. I think Joe Burrow is the lock to be number 1 unless for some unknown reason a team trades up with them. But I think Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in this class. Now, will he end up being the best quarterback in this class? I know we've talked about a little bit off air about how he's only really done it for 1 year. He lost his job at Ohio State, and it was a clear competition with Dwayne Haskins, and he flat out lost his job, transferred down to LSU. And it'll be interesting. I mean, I know that offense was loaded down in LSU. Not saying Cincinnati obviously won't be loaded or any team where he ends up, but is he a one-year wonder, or does he really have the tangibles to be one of the next greats in the NFL?
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to think he had it perfect. Might be one of the best teams ever in college football, that LSU team, because they were a problem both sides of the ball. That offense was loaded. And as you just touched on, transferred out of Ohio State to LSU into a perfect situation in LSU and played 1 season as a starting quarterback there. It's like we saw multiple seasons of Joe Burrow where it's like, all right, this guy's done it for a while. We can buy into this. We've seen Mitch Trubisky, how that worked out. Not many starts as a college quarterback. And, yeah, I think Chicago would love to take that pick back after Mahomes is taking 10. Deshaun Watson also in that draft. I think, we're going to find out. Not saying Cincinnati, as you touched on, Cincinnati doesn't have weapons. Cincinnati did franchise tag A.J. Green. They have Joe Mixon there, Giovanni Bernard. They also have Tyler Boyd there, the Pitt product. There's plenty of receivers there. They had some guys step up this season at the receiving core for Cincinnati, so they do have some weapons there. Auden Tate, guy who stepped up this season for them. So they have some talent wide-out-wise there for Joe Burrow. The offensive line's a problem in a loaded AFC North with the Pittsburgh Steelers front. The Ravens bringing over Calais Campbell this offseason. They were going to sign Michael Brockers. That didn't go out, pan out for them. But the AFC North is loaded up front, and then Cleveland has some pass rushers up front with Myles Garrett coming back this season. I think that could be a problem for Cincinnati. So I think Cincinnati needs to address that after that number 1 pick is getting some help on the offensive line, because that could be really, really bad for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, back in just September when college football season started last year, Joe Burrow was being looked at as one of the top prospects for day 2. So he jumped a lot last year. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how it plays out. But he will have weapons there in Cincinnati with A.J. Green and Joe Mixon.
Yes, for sure. Then we have – this is where the draft gets very interesting. That's what stinks about this draft not being, a live draft, because I think this draft is going to get really, really heated up top in the top 5 picks. Chase Young here could go number 2 to the Redskins. There's been rumors that the Redskins would possibly take Tua or Justin Herbert for that matter. Or here, wild card, Jordan Love. I don't know what's going to happen in this draft. That's what's crazy about it. That's what's kind of exciting about it. And that's what the NFL could really take advantage of, possibly with this virtual draft, tossing in some new wrinkles and stuff into it. And I guarantee they will. They're going to try to hit a home run on this. But what do you think goes on at 2? I think Chase Young would go here. They need another pass rusher to go with Ryan Kerrigan. And what do you think goes on number 2 here with the Redskins?
Oh, man, this is definitely, like you said, where it starts to get interesting. I think, as you noted, Chase Young is by far the best talent in this draft. I think if it wasn't for the need at quarterback, as usual, I mean, quarterbacks tend to be overdrafted in NFL drafts just because there's such a need. But Chase Young being 6'5", 265, I mean, coming out of Ohio State, he's a stud. There's no two ways about it. He's going to be an impact player wherever he lands. Like you said, I mean, Washington has so many ways to go. As you can see, they're not happy with Dwayne Haskins. So I don't know what they're going to do in that aspect. It could be a situation like Josh Rosen where they do draft a quarterback, whether it's Tua, whether it's Herbert, or even Love, as you stated as well. So I think they should take Chase Young here. But what I think and what they do are two different things. It'll definitely be interesting. This is definitely where it starts to get dicey with Miami, the Chargers, the Lions, all right here that are in need of not just a quarterback, but have the ability to move back for teams that do need a quarterback.
Yes, it does get very interesting. And as you did touch on, they might not be happy with Dwayne Haskins, especially with the new head coach coming in and Ron Rivera. You always have the coaches where it's like, well, you saw it with Arizona last season. They drafted Kyler Murray, and the year before they just drafted Josh Rosen. So, and look where that ended up with Josh Rosen being washed through Miami. Miami's going to be getting a quarterback probably this season. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what goes on with Washington. I think it's pretty much a common sense pick here to go Chase Young and see what you got in Dwayne Haskins. Because worst case, you guys are bad this year. You're going to get either Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence next year. But at the same time, if they really like Tua or Herbert or Jordan Love, you can have something here, or take the best guy available probably in this draft. You saw the impact Nick Bosa did last year for the 49ers. Take Chase Young here at 2. But then we have a very, very interesting thing here at 3 with the Detroit Lions. Jeffrey Okudah sitting there at corner from Ohio State. Yet again, another Ohio State guy. He's sitting there at 3. They just traded away Big Play Slay to the Eagles. I don't know what Detroit does here. There's been a lot of media pressure. I like Colin Cowherd. I listen to him quite a bit. Him and a lot of other people from Fox Sports have been putting pressure on the Lions to trade away Matthew Stafford and take a young face of the franchise here in Tua. What do you think at number 3? I know they've been linked to Jeffrey Okudah at 3 with the corner, but what are your takes here on the Lions?
Oh, man, they can do so much here. I definitely think that they have the ability to trade back with whether it's Miami or the Chargers and still land Okudah, whether it's at 5 or it's at 6, whichever they choose to do. I know Brian Flores and Matt Patricia used to work together up in New England, so they do have that repertoire. And if Miami feels that they need to trade up to get Tua, then they may have to do so, because I definitely think the Chargers are a threat of potentially moving up to get Tua. We know the Giants, they don't need a cornerback with Okudah. They just signed Bradbury in the offseason, so I don't think that they need to possibly do that. They do need an offensive lineman, whether it's Jedrick Wilkes or Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. They could go with Jerry Jeudy from Alabama to put someone out wide for Daniel Jones. But I think the Giants' biggest struggle especially has been the offensive line, so I think they need to solidify that. So I don't think the Lions have to worry about them as much, but they could stay at 3 and keep their pick, but I think they will I think that pick will be moved on draft day.
Yeah, at the same time, though, Detroit did just lose Darius Slay, and if there's a legit corner up top there, and we've seen how important corners are in this league, if you can get a legit corner, you kind of can't pass on it. You saw what Jalen Ramsey got trade value from Jacksonville. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to pass up a guy like Jeffrey Okudah if they rank him that high on their board, to not take a guy like that after you just lost a stud at corner in Darius Slay. So it's going to be very interesting what happens at 3. Tua, trade. We're going to find out here. Giants at 4. I think the Giants are in a good spot here. I think the Giants would have liked to be at 3. It's just a better situation at 3. But 4 is a really good spot for the Giants, because either they can trade back and get a haul if Tua is still sitting there for some reason at 4, get a haul for that pick, trade back, get one of their tackles that they need or an offensive lineman that they need. Same time, though, the Giants have plenty to work with here at 4. They got a franchise piece in Daniel Jones, so they don't need to worry about quarterback. What do you think best situation here for the Giants?
Yeah, I think they should definitely focus on that offensive line. You saw it last year, Daniel Jones, whether it was Daniel Jones or Eli Manning, they were constantly on their back. Not much room for Saquon to run when he was healthy. So I think Tristan Wirfs, in my opinion, is the best offensive lineman in this draft. He was a freak at the combine. That's if I was them, that's where I would go. They could also look at Alabama's offensive tackle with Jedrick Wills. There's a lot of ways they can go. They're saying that David Gettleman does want to put another weapon outside, and the Giants are known to grab flashy players at the top of the draft. They did it with Saquon, and they may go with Jerry Jeudy there in the slot.
Yeah, it's very interesting what the Giants could do. I think Isaiah Simmons would be a really, really, really good pick for them at 4 out of Clemson, a guy that can do anything he's asked to do at linebacker. You can put him outside, inside, wherever you need to put this man. I think Isaiah Simmons would probably be the best pick for them at 4. But at the same time, you don't know what's going to be there. They can have another corner, and Okuda sitting there, a stud, Simmons. They literally are in a good spot at 4. They're going to get a great pick no matter what. They can either go offensive line, as you just touched on with Willis, or the kid from Louisville. I mean, they have plenty of options at 4. I think the Giants are in a good spot. Either way you slice it, because they got Miami right behind them. They can play phone tag with the Chargers at 6. And we're going to get into your Miami Dolphins here at 5. But the Giants have plenty to work with at 4. You can either trade back a few spots and get one of these still guys here, because I think Miami either is going to go a quarterback or the Chargers here. So now we're going to get onto your Dolphins, loaded up here with first-round draft picks, getting 3 here in the first round. What do you think Miami does here at 5?
Oh, man, it's so tough because they could be blowing smoke screens about that they're not really confident in Tua anymore. I saw ex-NFL GM Mike Lombardi put out a podcast just yesterday, and he said that Tua is extremely brittle, which, as we know, he is. He had, in the last year and a half, he's had 5 injuries, and the most known one is his dislocated hip. But he's had ankle injuries, he's had finger issues, knee sprains. So Tua does appear to be very brittle. But then Justin Herbert, I think both quarterbacks raise questions. I think the biggest thing is that Herbert is not injury prone that we know of. But they say he does need some time to develop when he comes to the pros, and he's more of a one-read guy, which, as us Dolphins fans know, we don't want to deal with another Tannehill. So
Whoa, Tannehill, whoa. Come on, I saw what he did to the Titans this year, but not continue.
But yeah, I mean, Tannehill was great when he was here. I can't take that away from him. He had a great year in Tennessee. But more importantly, I think that the Dolphins, if they can get him, I think Tua is their guy. If they have to trade up to get him, I would rather them not trade up to get him because they do need a few positions, and I don't want them – I think if they had to trade up, they would lose at least, if not both, their first round, later round picks. They have 18, and then they have another one in the 20s. So I hope they just stay here. I think they'll land either Herbert or Tua, and whichever one they land, I'll be happy with.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's going to go on here at 5. The Dolphins might have to slide up 1 to get to 4, or maybe even 3, because I think Detroit would not be scared of taking phone calls, especially to get a haul for that number 3 pick for one of these franchise possible quarterbacks with Herbert, Tua, and Jordan Love. It's going to be very interesting what happens here at 5. As you did touch on with them having the pick at 18 from Pittsburgh and a one later on in the 20s, I would not be mad if the Dolphins move up a spot if they really like Tua to get the 4 or 3, giving up. I don't think they give up both first-round picks. I think they give up 1. It's probably the 18 pick to move up to get it. And if you have to move up, if you love Tua, but if you grade them both very similar, you don't trade them. You don't do it. You don't trade up to get a Tua. You don't move up a few spots. You keep your 3 first-round picks. They've done very well in free agency this offseason, bringing over Byron Jones, bringing a Kyle Van Noy from New England. They've done a very good job free agency-wise, bringing in some needs for the Dolphins. plenty of assets coming up here in the draft. Then we have 6, the LA Chargers. They've been linked to Justin Herbert, Tua, clearly. They've made some noise here. They didn't get Tom Brady, so that clearly makes their quarterback window open here. Very interesting team. They're a very talented team here. They should not be this high at 6. The offense is loaded with Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. That team's just loaded. They should not be here at 6. Derwin James coming back healthy here at safety in the back end for them. They got Tyrod Taylor coming in. Talks as they have a lot of confidence in Tyrod. Tyrod's not even that old, so he could be the next, franchise piece there. They might go something else here at 6, but I suspect them of going a quarterback. What do you see here at 6? And I hate seeing mock drafts with no trades involved. Like, stop being stubborn. There's going to be trades in this draft, especially here in the top 6 or 7 picks.
Yeah, absolutely. And to continue with the Tua Herbert talk, because the Chargers obviously need a quarterback. Well, they don't need one, but all signs are pointing that they will take one. Tua did, as Mike Lombardi mentioned, he did fail a physical with the team through a virtual Skype. The team was not mentioned who he took the physical with, but he did fail a physical with the team in the top 10. Lombardi didn't want to disclose the source, obviously, but it is definitely an interesting take. Maybe Tua will lose a little bit of stock now, but we'll see. He looked good, obviously, in the Instagram video that he put out of him doing drills while he was training. I think, to go back to the Chargers, I think either the Chargers or the Dolphins get up to 3 or 4. I don't know which one it will be. I think the Chargers are the favorites right now to jump. I think the Dolphins are very laid back in that aspect. Brian Flores is very stubborn, as they say. So I can see them sitting back and saying, listen, if we land Tua, that's great. If not, we're content with Justin Herbert. We're happy with him. Herbert is also Chan Gailey, the Miami Dolphins' new offensive coordinator. He is his nephew. So that's a little family note to add.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Flores coming over from New England side. I see the stubbornness there coming from Belichick. But, yeah, it's very interesting what happens there. They have the assets to move if they want at 5. Chargers have plenty of options at 6. Then we get in Carolina here at 7. Carolina did just on Teddy Bridgewater, which I think might have been one of the biggest steals of the offseason up there with Bradbury for the Giants, getting him at a great price compared to what Byron Jones got. I think Carolina did a great job bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. They did lose Cam Newton in an ugly way. A lot of miscommunication there with Cam and Carolina. Did not look pretty. But Cam out of there in Carolina. Teddy comes in, who I think had a great season with the Saints. I think the Saints might have made a mistake letting Teddy walk instead of letting Drew Brees retire. But if the Saints are in a win-now situation, I understand what they're doing. Carolina at 7, great season last year for DJ Moore, receiver from Maryland. They got a lot of talent there. Christian McCaffrey clearly is a stud offensively, so that offense could be a problem again. They do let Bradbury walk here in the offseason. What do you expect here at 7? Do you expect them to get another receiver for Teddy Bridgewater or to help protect Teddy? What do you expect here at 7?
Yeah, I think they can go a few ways. They could definitely go with the offensive lineman, as we discussed. There's definitely a bunch of studs here at the top with Wirfs, Willis, and the kid from Louisville, Becton, who had an unbelievable combine as well. Or they could go on the defensive side of the ball with Derek Brown, the defensive end / tackle from Auburn, who could potentially replace Gerald McCoy down the line here. Isaiah Simmons, as you mentioned before, the linebacker, he's extremely good as well. So I think they have a few different ways they can go. I don't think they'll go to a wide receiver here, but there's always a possibility. Coaches like to add a stud wideout additionally to the already good core that they have there with DJ Moore. Yeah,
it's very interesting what happens at 7. Number 8, I think probably the best offseason for a team this year has to be the Arizona Cardinals getting a steal, an absolute steal for DeAndre Hopkins, my lord. Bill O'Brien needs to be fired. We'll get into that possibly later on. But, oh, my lord, a steal at 8. And, my lord, they can go anywhere they want now, Arizona. They have a stud quarterback here, franchise corner piece in Kyler Murray. They have a franchise receiver now in DeAndre Hopkins, but Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. They have a great running back in Kenyon Drake. Arizona can literally go whatever they want here. You don't see them going receiver, which they were projected to go here at 8 was a receiver. either getting Judy, CeeDee Lamb, any of those guys. Arizona can go whatever they want. If they want to protect Kyler at 8 with the offensive line piece here, it did not give a first-round draft pick up to get DeAndre Hopkins. What do you think Arizona does here at 8? The fact that they stole the offseason.
Yeah, that trade in the offseason was mind-blowing. I don't understand how Bill O'Brien can just let DeAndre Hopkins walk away like that. It's insane. But anyways, I think the Cardinals will go on the defensive side of the ball here. They struggled a lot in covering tight ends and slot wide receivers, and there's no one better than that than Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. As you noted before, he's a top linebacker in this class, and he can play multiple positions on defense. He can step out wide and cover the slot corner or the tight end, which they struggled with, or he can come inside and he can stuff the run. So I think they should focus on the defensive side of the ball, but Kyler moves around a lot, and you can always add another offensive lineman, whether it's a tackle or it's a guard, to keep him upright, because being that he does run around a lot, as we saw in the past with RG3 and other mobile quarterbacks, they tend to get hurt.
Yeah, they can literally go whatever they want here at 8. You got to figure – I understand where you're coming from with Isaiah Simmons. I don't see him falling relatively this far at all. I think Isaiah Simmons stays in the top 5, top 6 at the worst. I don't see him falling that far. I think this guy he's a wild card piece. He can literally do whatever is asked for him. Watching the highlight and clips of this guy play at Clemson this season, they put him everywhere in that defense, and he made plays wherever he was put. I just don't see him falling. I think the Giants take him if he's there, I believe, unless they get a haul for draft picks to trade back if Tua is still there. I just don't see Isaiah Simmons falling. I think that guy could be a problem in this league. And I think teams are going to notice that, and he's going to go early. Then we're going to go 9. I don't know what Jacksonville is doing. I'm very confused. The only positive thing I could come out of Jacksonville this season was they traded Nick Foles and got rid of that horrific contract that they decided to sign him to. But other than that, I don't know what Jacksonville's doing. A whole rebuild. They're going around Gardner Minshew. I really don't know what to do there. They traded away Calais Campbell for a bag of chips this offseason. They're going to go best available, I believe, at 9. But what's your take on Jacksonville?
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. If you're on the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you're a relatively decent player and you're in the starting lineup, you just get shipped off somewhere else, whether it's Jalen Ramsey or Calais Campbell or Nick Foles. It's amazing. But I think they should stick with defensive side of the ball, and maybe on the defensive line. They lost Calais Campbell.
Well, they're going to lose what's his name too. They're going to lose Ngakoue, guy they franchise tag. He wants out. He doesn't even want to be relatively close to the Jags. He wants out. He's made it known. But as you touched on, I think defense they can go whatever, as you just said.
Yeah, I think they should stick on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's cornerback, defensive tackle, defensive end. They definitely need a few pieces on the defensive side of the ball.
And we're going to go to 10 here, and then we're going to kind of speed through the rest of these picks, kind of like briefly go through them. But 10 here with the Cleveland Browns. As we kind of touched on with the Cincinnati Bengals early, offensive line is a problem for the Browns, and the fact that the AFC North, as we again touched on earlier, is loaded up front. Browns, I think, have to go offensive line. Let's see what your take is on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as we mentioned before with the Giants and a couple other teams, there's a couple studs here at the top at the tackle position, whether it's Willis Wirfs, Mekhi Becton from Louisville. They definitely have a few ways they can go.
So then let's briefly go through these. We got the Jets at 11. I'll probably go through the next 2, and I'll let you take the next 2 after that. But you got the Jets and Raiders here. Honestly, they both could go offensive weapons. Jets lost Robbie Anderson this offseason. They did bring in Brashad Perryman. But I think the Jets need another offensive weapon or another piece to protect Sam Darnold. I don't know. The Jets can go multiple ways here. The Raiders, Tyrell Williams, they might go an offensive weapon as well here at 12. Then you got San Fran at 13. They can go whatever. 14, Tampa. What do you think those 2 teams do, San Fran and Tampa?
Yeah, San Fran, I definitely think they'll need a wide receiver. They lost Emmanuel Sanders in free agency. And Deebo Samuel showed some bright spots last year. I think whether it's Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb, I think they should definitely reach for one of those 2. For the Buccaneers, I think with Tom Brady coming in, the best thing they can do is solidify that offensive line. Jameis Winston looked a little all over the place last year, as you saw with his 30 interceptions. So there's a bunch of good tackles and guards in this draft. whether it's Andrew Thomas, whether it's Wirfs, Becton, or Willis, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's very interesting what is going to go on there. New England losing Tom Brady to Tampa Bay. Tampa has some weapons offensively. You know who I think takes a hurt in this draft is the receivers. I think the receivers drop in this draft now after that Hopkins trade. Because it was pretty much a must that Arizona was going to go CeeDee Lamb or one of those guys there up at that 8 spot. When you're going through the rest of these teams, other than the Jets and the Raiders, the Browns certainly don't need one. You can see the Jaguars do it, but I don't see them doing it because who's throwing them the ball? I don't really see it at Jacksonville, but the receivers could kind of dip here, I think, maybe. I think it starts picking up again back here at, 12 through 15. Because I think Denver coming up here at 15, I think they might have a future there in Drew Lock, who was fantastic at the end of the season. 16, you got Atlanta. They got some wide receivers there, clearly Julio, Calvin Ridley. They did lose Austin Hooper, though. That's probably their biggest loss. One of the best tight ends fantasy-wise, Austin Hooper leaving Atlanta at 16.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what goes on. Atlanta did just get Todd Gurley, which was kind of surprising. Maybe he can reboost his career down there in Atlanta. Atlanta does need some help on the defensive side of the ball with possibly C.J. Henderson at cornerback from Florida. I saw there was a possibility. I read that they may move up to 11, where the Raiders are at, and possibly draft Henderson if they feel he won't fall that far to 16.
Yeah, then you have Dallas, and then your Dolphins again here at 18, and then the Raiders again at 19. Dallas coming in with a whole fresh new start. They did let Byron Jones walk this offseason. Dallas could go a lot of ways here. They don't really need any offensive weapons. They got Gallup. They re-signed Amari Cooper. They got Zeke. Prescott, they're still toying with Dak. But then you got Miami again at 18. I think Miami is going to draft their franchise quarterback. This pick might not be here at 18 from Pittsburgh if they do decide to move up to get a Tua. The Raiders at 19. Jacksonville again at 20. And then the Eagles at 21, which I think will possibly be Henry Ruggs' area or Justin Jefferson. What do you think about here at 21 with the Eagles and 22 with the Vikings?
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think the Eagles will look to add a wide receiver. Alshon Jeffrey can't seem to stay on the field, and Sean Jackson won't be on the team for very long. So I think they should look as a wide receiver here to be a long-term player for them. With Jeffrey always hurt and Deshaun possibly leaving. The Vikings are an interesting team. They do need help on both sides of the ball up front.
Got 2 picks here also. You got one here at 22 and 25 for the Vikings also.
Yeah, so they could use that as potential trade bait, or they could just keep their picks and go with an offensive tackle or a defensive lineman here.
Then you got New England at 23, which they can go whatever way they want to. That defense was fantastic. They did lose some pieces out. Harmon losing, Van Noy leaving, Jamie Collins. So they did lose some pieces there, so they might go defensively. I don't think any of these quarterbacks fall down to 23. You got the Saints at 24, the Minnesota Vikings again at 25. The Saints, also another big move this offseason, bringing Emmanuel Sanders into that offense. Finally, another receiver to go along with Michael Thomas. It's about time that offense can be more explosive this season. Then again, Miami at 26, Seattle 27, Baltimore 28, 29, Tennessee, 30, Green Bay, 31, San Fran for a second, and then your Super Bowl champs. So what's your biggest overhaul to wrap up this draft? Because you can't go through all these teams. You're going to be here for 2 hours going through all these teams, what they're going to do in the first round. But we got through most of them. We got to very tail end where a lot of these teams just need little things. What do you expect here in this draft? Do you expect receivers early and often? What do you expect from the up top? How many quarterbacks go in the first round? What's your overview for this draft before we wrap this pod up?
Yeah, so I definitely think there will be a couple trades. I'm not sure how many in the top 10, but I definitely do think there's at least 2 trades to shake up the top 10. I think with wide receivers, as you mentioned, with the DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona, I think receivers will fall. I think Judy may still go relatively early just because of his talent. I don't think he'll go top 10, but I do think he goes within the top 15. And then you tend to see receivers, there's a little bit of a run on them with whether it's Ruggs, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I think there will be 4 quarterbacks taken I think Burrow, Tua, Herbert, and Jordan Love will all be taken in the first round.
Well, that is a wrap for this episode of the Personal Foul Podcast, giving you a little overview of the NFL draft coming up here in a few weeks. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. It's good talking sports again.
Yes, it was, man. Just to try to ease people out of this. You got a lot of sports stuff not really going on here, sadly, but you can follow Dan on Twitter at DRose0127. You can follow the Personal Foul Podcast at foul_podcast on Twitter. You can find the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. That's where we're at. Stay safe, everyone.